Yeah, Saeed.
Thank you, Matt. Going back to UNRWA, I mean, I went to UNRWA schools for a while. My wife went to UNRWA schools all her life, and she depended on UNRWA ration. It is a major part of sustaining the Palestinians in every way. And, trying to, sort of satanize and UNRWA and say that it has done some evil things and so on, goes back before this war. It goes back to 2017 when they stopped the fund. My question to you, you said that, you are deeply troubled by the decision. And you also said that you engaged the Israelis. What steps will the United States take to ensure that UNRWA continues to operate?
I'm not going to preview anything from here today, Saeed. If you look at the letter that the Secretary sent, he made clear that we're opposed to the passage of this legislation, and he made clear that there could be legal and policy implications to the implementation of that legislation. That remains true.
Okay, but you see, because you said that we want to see that aid is properly allowed into the Palestinian areas and so on. But we're not talking about UNRWA. UNRWA is basically, if UNRWA is compromised, the whole aid for the Palestinians, and in fact, their whole, their whole connection with what's going on in the world community, it stops. It's totally compromised. I'm saying that, will you, let's say, agree to if UNHCR, for instance, takes over the aid to the Palestinians?
Sorry, I can't get into a hypothetical.
Okay. All right. Let me ask you a couple more questions, if you allow me. Now, you said that at one point, I think you said that if there's a vacuum, then Hamas would return and the Palestinians will be under the tyranny of Hamas again. So is the purpose of the war is really to free the Palestinians from Hamas tyranny?
The purpose of the war, from Israel's perspective, and I'm just going to say what they have said publicly, that the purpose of the war was to ensure that to ensure that Hamas could not repeat this attack again, to hold its leadership accountable. They have done both of those things, and to return the hostages. They have completed two pretty significant objectives. They've also decimated the Hamas's military capabilities, and so what the Secretary impressed upon them last week was that it is time to find a way to bring this war to an end. Now, we have also made clear, and this is, we have also made clear that Hamas cannot continue to govern Gaza the way it did before October 7th, because you saw the result of Hamas governance of Gaza, and that is horrific consequences for the Israeli people and horrific consequences for the Palestinian people.
But seeing what, I don't know, I mean, they call it a war. It's not a war. There is no opposing army. It is really a slaughter that we have every day. And I don't want to enter into polemics and so on.
Is the stipulation that there are no Hamas fighters left who are still shooting at the IDF soldiers?
Yes.
Of
course there are Hamas.
Well, so okay, so like that's before you rename the conflict or let's have fact. Let's just establish facts about what is actually happening.
Honestly, what we see day after day is a slaughter. It is a slaughter. I think there will come a time when you guys have to call it exactly what it is, because every day, I asked this question several weeks back about Palestinians get up every day, for another 100 dead, for another 100, and this keeps going on. There is no end in sight. It doesn't seem that Israel has any incentive to basically indulge even in serious talks about a ceasefire.
Saeed, the horrific consequences of this war are exactly why we are trying to end it. The very things you just went through, and I would add to the suffering that's going on, the suffering of the hostages and the hostages' families, is for all those reasons that we're trying to end the war, and trying to end the war in a way that ensures peace and security for Israelis and Palestinians in the future.
Okay. One last question on the aid. Now, the letter was sent out, I guess, around October 15th, so the deadline is November 15th?
I think it was sent
on November 13th.
It was sent October 14th. It was 30 days. There's 31 days in October, so that might be November 13th. I don't know when you start the count, but there will be a lawyer somewhere in our building who could tell you the answer, the precise answer to that question.
So on November 15th, we're going to say the deadline has passed and you have not done. I'm not going
to predict what we're going to do, but we made clear in the letter what the deadline was for implementing changes.
Maybe you could bring that lawyer down to answer some questions from the podium, particularly about how you guys have not been able to come to any conclusion about whether what Israel is doing amounts to violations of international law.
Well, there are any number of lawyers in this building who are working on that question, but
Well, I know.
for better or for worse,
We'll just
it's
bring
my,
one of them-
for better
one of them
for better
down
for
to-
worse, it's my job to stand
to
before you all and take questions every day.
Sorry, when you say there are a number of lawyers in this building who are working on that question, the State Department lawyers are working on the question of whether or not Israeli military has violated international humanitarian law in Gaza or not? There are State Department lawyers working on that?
Of course there are. That's something we've said a number of times, that there are a number of a number of
Using what
incidents.
process exactly?
I'm not going to get so, Humera, you know the answer to this question
No,
because
but
no,
isn't
hold on,
like-
just let me
is this
hold,
like,
Humera, let me finish before. You know the answer to this question because you asked it to me before, and I've answered it before. We have a number of ongoing processes to look at the facts of a number of incidents and to make specific assessments
Yes, but
about those
I'm
incidents.
pretty sure you didn't mention State Department lawyers
Of
are
cour-
looking at it.
of course
Like you
there's
said,
state-
we have
there's state- so
ongoing
the-
processes. So the L Bureau is
So
involved
of course
in-
there are lawyers that Humera, first let me just back up and say, there is very little that we do here that doesn't involve lawyers in one way or the other. But of course, when it comes to making
Sure,
judgments
sure.
about international humanitarian law, of course there are lawyers involved. They're not the only people involved, but yeah, of course there are.
And is this part of an atrocity
I'm
determination
not going
process?
to get into the processes that we have.
Can you
underway.
say you don't have an atrocity
No, I'm
determination
not.
process?
As I have said to you before, I don't think it's appropriate for me to talk about the underlying processes that we have underway while they're ongoing.